It's now time to join Chief Marketing Officer at Swash, Chloe Diamond, Head of Growth at Streamr, Shiv Malik, and Sheridan Johns of the Ocean Protocol to discuss the future of cryptocurrency.
Welcome everybody to this session on the future of cryptocurrency and data. My name's David Wood and it's my pleasure to chair this session. I've had a data processor in my pocket, taking it everywhere I go since 1988, when I started using at the time a Scion Organizer 2 handheld device, which had limited data storage then, but even since that time, the questions of data connectivity, data exchange, and data monetization have been important. Step forwards, 33 years to 2021, and these questions are even more important. As our three panelists today will help us explore, cryptocurrencies, blockchain, and Web 3.0 technologies have a great deal of potential. So to start this discussion, I'll ask each panelist to address the question, what do you see as the key issues and challenges with today's economy? Let's start with Sheridan Johns.
Hi, thank you. Great to be here today and I appreciate the opportunity. My name is Sheridan Johns. I cover ecosystem and collaboration at Ocean Protocol. And Ocean Protocol really recognizes that data will be the driving force for innovation in the emerging data economy. Ocean Protocol allows people to share and buy data while preserving privacy and control. Up until now, people have been locked out of the data economy, in our opinion, for various reasons, whether that be concerns about data leakage or maybe the data being used, their data being used against the values that they have, maybe by those who collect it and also sell it and monetize it without their consent. So for us, this shadow data economy is something that Ocean Protocol hopes to at least help address and open up and instill some different, let's say, values that will drive that forward. It's the data economy. Obviously, everyone by now knows it's a multi-billion dollar industry and opportunity that's growing by the second, but it's very much dominated by a few players up until now. So, these opportunities to unlock data, also to preserve privacy and control of data are very important, at least moving forward. And also, enable a more equitable distribution of the value that's being created and shared, as well as the power over that value that's being created. And last but not least, also operate within the confines of the regulatory system. That's also very important. Cryptocurrencies have up until now been somewhat subject to certain skepticism, at least in terms of the implementation. But with respect to the data economy, we see that actually their characteristics of provenance and traceability as actually being quite unique and quite valuable. So those are some of the issues that we certainly see, and we hope that some of these challenges we can help address together, as well as what we're building here at Ocean Protocol.
Thanks, Sheridan. We'll pick up some of these very interesting points in a minute. Chloe, would you like to offer your opening remarks?
Sure. So yeah, thank you for hosting us, and it's good to be here. So I'm Chloe, I'm CMO of Swash, and basically Swash is, in its current form, a browser plugin that rewards people for the value of their data. And this is with the sole idea of the current data economy working in a way that exploits individual people, so the everyday internet user like we are. And this is working to the detriment of the users who are on the internet, and they don't really have any say in what happens to their data. It's all very shady. They don't have, it's often collected without knowledge and consent as well. And finally, they don't receive any of the profits that are generated, which is amounting into billions, if not trillions of dollars. So what Swash does, basically, it works to put the human at the center of this economy and make everything work in the benefit of them, basically by leading to, it basically captures pools and then uploads the data in a way that it kind of creates like a data union. So it's working on behalf of the people within that union. And that's to try and make sure that people are receiving what they should receive for their data in the economy going forwards. And also allowing them to really practice their data rights in real time. And I think this is something which, until now, people are quite wary about discussing things around data, because we always hear such negative stories, whether it's different scandals like Cambridge Analytica, or if it's just kind of delivered in a very technical way, it tends to scare people away from the discussion. But then by actually letting people kind of almost take agency over their own role on the online world especially, you can kind of start opening up that discussion for like everyday people, because it really affects everyone.
Thanks, Chloe. Let's turn to you, Shiv. What's your views on the current issues and challenges with the data economy? Do you agree with what you've heard already?
Yeah, I do, and I can perhaps augment it. So I'm Shiv Malik. Thank you, by the way, for having us all on. In fact, it's really a necessary discussion to have. And so I'm head of growth at Streamr, and Streamr basically is building out the back-end infrastructure for these entities we call data unions. Swash is, in fact, the first. And I'm one of the largest. So if I think Chloe, you've got 13,500 members as we record. It keeps going up every day. So hard to keep track. But there are other data unions that are kind of popping up and occurring all the time. So, one of the major problems, I think, is also from the data brokering side. And, this is the World Ethical Data Forum. And people have tended to say, ethics, where's the money in that, right? That's the kind of usually the cynical point of view. And the answer is very much so. Without trust, it turns out, your economy breaks down rapidly. And the best exemplar of that has been the data economy. Data brokers are not trusted. They don't have consent from users. So they're constantly finding new ways to spy on people, whether that's through their software or through an SDK on an app, or through kind of burying this stuff in terms and conditions that no one reads. They then end up creating products which are really poor quality, right? Because you can't, as the buyer coming along, you can't really inspect them and go, yeah, where did you get this data from? Because then you open a Pandora's box of ethical issues, but it also hits at, the quality of the data, because you can't also get a sustainable relationship with the people who are creating the data, right? Because they'll constantly go, wait, hang on, what's going on here? Or they'll leave, or the cookie will get deleted, right? And of course, then, the big tech itself, on one hand, is benefited massively from being, from siloing the data themselves, which means that no one else can really benefit. And on the other hand, cracking down on privacy, right? So they'll say, on behalf of our users, we have to now delete the cookie economy, or we have to, as Apple, add these extra dialog boxes in, which means that you're probably not going to get that data as a third party using on the iOS system or ecosystem. So it's just led to the wreckage of what could have, an economy that does actually produce a lot of value. So enterprises have simple questions to answer. They can't answer at the moment. You think with all this information around, they'd be able to say, where do we stand compared to our competitors, right? Just simple benchmarking exercises. They can't do that at the moment, right? Where are the future trends? They don't have the raw data to be able to answer, again, any of those questions. So, it's a mess because we haven't got the ethics right. We haven't got trust. We haven't got, therefore, quality. And then we haven't got monetization really happening in the way that, it should be. So ultimately, those are the huge challenges on that side. What does crypto have to offer? I mean, maybe we'll come to that in a second. But the answer is the way of unlocking this whole thing and bringing back trust and bringing back quality, and then bringing back actually a kind of a much better, more fluid economy to the whole system.
So let's pick that up. I mean, you've always talked about issues. You've talked about data leakage. You've talked about the risk that our data will be spied on. You've talked about users being locked out of their data. You've talked about unclear terms and conditions, and generally a lack of trust. And now, Shiv, you've mentioned cryptocurrencies as potentially a solution, but Sheridan, you said there's been a lot of skepticism about these things in the past. So maybe you can each of you tell more about your vision for how these new technologies, whether it's blockchain or cryptocurrencies or other Web 3.0 technologies, will make a real difference soon, rather than just in some imagined hype world. Mm-hmm. Sheridan.
Yeah, no, a great question, and of course that's all. I think that the reason driving at least your guests here on this panel right now, we're all in that cryptocurrency blockchain space. We realize the value of it, and want it to be adopted, want it to be implemented, and realize that there has been certain skepticism in the past just because of some hype, and certainly with the first, let's say, Bitcoin bubble. Whether we're in the second one right now will remain to be seen. But cryptocurrencies really can bring a lot to the data economy. And I think the key question really is, how can you use cryptocurrencies to transform the data into, let's say, a data asset that can produce value, right? While maintain privacy and control. Those are some of the attributes that the blockchain technology has, and they can be easily used within the cryptocurrency world, i.e. blockchain. So, Ocean Protocol designed for this, and we very much wanted to create basically a new asset class, and that asset class is data as an asset. So I could go into some technical details, which I'll maybe say for later, but the fact that one is able to use cryptocurrencies to create an asset class, which is a data asset class, and so there's actual utility and value that's being unlocked while maintaining the privacy, is an enormous step forward in unlocking the data economy. Certainly using cryptocurrencies as the driving force. So from my side, that would be where I see the difference being made, and Ocean Protocol certainly been working towards that, and hopes to act as the connecting tissue for the data economy, using data assets based on data tokens and Ocean token and all of that tokenomics aside. But that's certainly underpinned by the technology of blockchain.
Chloe, do you have the same view? Do you have a different mix of technologies you bring to the party?
Yeah, so I think in terms of actually obviously the three of us coming from Swash, Streamr, and Ocean here, we all have quite complementary offerings, I think, and that's partly due to I think a lot of the ideology, for lack of a better word, around blockchain and cryptocurrencies and maybe Web3 as a whole. That there's this idea of really being able to work as a collaborative rather than kind of against each other. And that really helps kind of drive the whole industry forward in a way which isn't necessarily, like self-sabotaging or destructive for anyone. And it can actually, with that in mind, it has the kind of right priorities there for creating something that's actually sustainable and brings benefit to a larger majority of people in ways that we haven't really seen before. So for me, I think actually a lot of the kind of motive of why people even come into blockchain and crypto is really a positive thing. And it is a shame that it tends to be overshadowed by, like Sheridan mentioned as well, this kind of hype and the idea of bubbles. It's quite a limiting way of looking at it. So I mean, even just in terms of practicalities, like with Swash, when we redistribute profits back out to the Swash members, that's using smart contracts, which is actually built on Streamr's technology. And that simply wouldn't really be possible if we're relying on banks to make every single individual microtransaction. And also with this in mind, because of using smart contracts, which are just self-executing contracts, we're basically the user and also the data buyer on the other side don't really need to trust even Swash or Streamr or Ocean or anyone in between, because it's happening in this like trustless, permissionless way. So we're kind of like almost the channel for this to happen. But actually, and also to add to that is the fact it's open source. So people can see what's going on, and there is transparency behind it. That if you want to dig deeper, it's not being kept from you. There's nothing that's shady. Whereas the current data economy, I think we can all agree, has been kept very deliberately obscure until now.
Shiv, what do you have to add to that?
Yeah, okay, just to take one more step, but just in case we don't lose the audience, because we might, and see, like we guys all hang out together, so we do know each other, and there's a good reason why. Because we all interoperate, as Chloe has sort of already mentioned. So Swash is the front-facing consumer end of this, right, in a sense. So, they're out there trying to get members on board. You download the Swash plugin, and obviously then you're starting to generate data, which you can send through Streamr using effectively Streamr's backend network. They don't know it's Streamr. They can do if it's there. It's open to know. But they don't have to have that. They don't have that relationship directly with us. We're just the kind of infrastructure layer. And then that data can be monetized on Ocean. If I point that way, I think I'm pointing to Sheridan. Am I? I don't know. And it's on there that they do some fantastic things by turning packets of data into tokens themselves, right? It's really kind of wild in many senses, but it's almost certainly where the future lies with these things. So people can trade these packets of data and again in a more open and fluid, with a lot more liquidity backing it, sort of way. So all of this is sort of fascinating because it all interoperates. But the key of all of this is look, you want to get consent from users to say, is this okay? Not as these, okay, do you want to do it like actively? Because you have to actively download this thing, and in return, we will incentivize you for doing this, right? So you will get some kind of reward. At the moment, we're talking, generally speaking, monetary rewards, but there are other social rewards which you can get, right? So, for example, with Swash, it could just be, look, here's a readout of your habits over the last month. This is what you tend to do on the internet, right? That's quite useful. I don't know that from Google, right? I kind of get that from my iPhone, right? With screen time, I'm like, oh yeah. Okay. But there are loads of other data unions that might be able to provide all sorts of other personalized benefits to that, on top of the monetary value that they're providing by aggregating all of this raw data, pseudonymizing it on behalf of their users, and then trying to monetize it, right? And Swash data, for example, is the stuff that Google has, but they don't sell it to anyone. So it's incredibly valuable information, right, about user journeys of the web. What do people do on the internet, right? Big question, no answers, except in silos that are heavily guarded and protected. So that's how, in a sense, we all operate. That's why crypto is so important, because you can pass digital, small, tiny micropayments to users, which then add up over time. And that's why you need cryptography and cryptographic keys and all that to secure that whole system. But it also adds those secondary benefits by creating these very kind of amazingly esoteric marketplaces for monetizing the data on top of it too.
Let's talk about some of the risks and problems that may be faced. You've talked about Bitcoin bubbles, and goodness knows how many times the price has gone up and then down. Are your business models dependent upon Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies remaining high? Or if there's a social backlash against Bitcoin, if people say, oh, it's using too much electricity, it's bad, and if that bubble busts, does that mean your businesses are now in trouble? Or are you dependent on other mechanisms that are safe from such an eventuality?
Ooh. Sheridan, do you want to come on that, or should I can jump in, or up to you?
Well, I mean, my take, cryptocurrencies and blockchain right now it's an emerging technology, even though it has been around almost 10 years or longer in terms of the first experimentations and iterations of it. And as it increases, as it continues to harden and applications are, let's say, tested and tried, and moving away from different consensus mechanisms, whether it be a proof of work to proof of stake. The technology is always evolving. I think the volatility that you see with the specific currencies don't necessarily immediately translate one-to-one in the actual technology backing those currencies. But sure, there needs to be, let's say, more understanding. There needs to be more education about what the technology is that enables the currencies. And so I think that there are inherent risks involved in any emerging technologies, but I think some of the early adopters have recognized the reward at the same time, and are willing to, take on those risks. And as we move forward, I think that we need to also look at the risks in the existing system, right? Not all systems need to be decentralized, as one would think if you talk to someone who's converted into the blockchain world. But then again, there are inherent risks in the current centralized systems as well. So single point of failure and systemic risk and others that one can think of. And when you point to financial crisis that were really produced by the current system, there needs to be certain alternatives, and those alternatives may come with risks. But I think it's important maybe to highlight also this emergence of and opportunities that decentralized finance also brings into the equation. We're talking about an economy. An economy needs to have liquidity. It needs to have financial instruments, and all of this is being built right now to enable more, let's say, risk-free use and deployment of cryptocurrencies. And in that sense, linking that back to data, we very much also at Ocean have seen that and have welcomed that, and also have built accordingly to make DeFi kind of tools in that DeFi space also be immediately available for data assets.
DeFi, decentralized finance.
Yes, excuse me. Yes, decentralized finance. So these new tools in the decentralized finance space, DeFi space, can also be used in the data economy space. Whether that be tools for provenance, tools for liquidity, tools for just storage and custodianship. All these tools are being built and exist in the DeFi world, and now that's available through technologies like Ocean Protocol for others in the data space. So back to your question on risk, there are risks. They're inherent to the space, but there are also those in the space are very aware of them.
So, Chloe, to what extent is your solution safe from volatility in the cryptocurrency markets? And maybe you could also look at the question of the costs of microtransactions, because one of the criticisms often raised is that actually even a small transaction has a lot of financial cost to it, as well as computing costs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so in terms of, I think what Sheridan mentioned in terms of the blockchain technology behind the scenes not necessarily being reflective of the volatility that we find in the price, I think that's a really important thing to consider here, because like Swash is currently using Streamr's data coin for payments, and that's something which also the price of that currency is likely to increase as adoption of the actual app increases as well. So there are certain things there which is an incentive for people anyway to kind of join, and it brings like another element of reward, I guess, for people. But yeah, I also just wanted to add as well in terms of like obviously for Swash, where Shiv mentioned we're the kind of user-facing side of this ecosystem. A big priority for us has been almost translating how it's working and what it actually is to a quite general audience. It's not that we're only targeting people who already know about cryptocurrencies. And this is actually quite a big discussion in this crypto and blockchain space, is about mass adoption. So part of it as well, you could argue, do they really need to know about how crypto works or what blockchain is to be able to use anything? Do we know how, MasterCard and Visa work? No, most of us don't. So there's that side of it, which I think it comes down to that user experience. And I've also found that there's also, I guess, the same kind of, but I guess like an entry barrier in terms of what education is needed around data, just as much as there is around blockchain and crypto. So it's something which we've kind of, this research was done last year, I guess about this time last year, about how people actually respond to the use of crypto in with an early majority and an early adopter audience. And actually the general consensus was that crypto wasn't something that put people off. It was very much like, okay, well, this exists and I'm happy to kind of be a part of it once they actually understand what that solution is. But then I think I touched on it before, that there is this idea that because data maybe has quite negative connotations, that I think a smaller number of people are aware of the positives of data, or they're cautiously saying that. It's not always so easy to translate the way that works in a way that's actually beneficial for people. That there's a certain level of cognitive dissonance there, which I think is harder to overcome in that data narrative than it is in the blockchain and crypto narrative.
So making things easier for users. After all, the internet was around since 1969, but it was only when the messiness of HTTP and so on, these protocols were hidden away by wonderful web browsers, that people started using them. And most people have got no idea even what HTTP stands for, and nor should they. So Shiv, what's your take on these risks and issues?
Yeah, no, I think Chloe and Sheridan have kind of covered them really well. I mean, maybe one thing to add just on the environmental aspect, kind of, if you want to know the kind of what's going on in the background, it's proof of work that takes up all of the energy effectively. There are other systems for doing this called proof of stake, which actually almost all new blockchains are kind of have moved to. And Ethereum, which is the second biggest chain, if you want, is also moving to. Bitcoin's a funny one like that because it also acts as a kind of gateway for the rest of crypto. And once you kind of have caught a bit of it's got the best brand awareness, if you want. People will talk about Bitcoin around the dinner table, but they rarely talk about Ethereum in the same way. And the Ethereum ecosystem, there's just hundreds, or actually, was it tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of developers working on the Ethereum ecosystem, and there's very few working on Bitcoin, which doesn't actually change. So it's a good gateway into the rest of it. So we kind of we're thankful for that, I think, in the Ethereum community. But it hasn't changed, and it won't really change all that much as a piece of technology. So yeah, it will have some of those environmental problems left over.
We're down to the last couple of minutes. Maybe we could look a bit more at the future. After all, the title of the session is The Future of Cryptocurrency and Data. So maybe 1 minute each of you, or maybe 40 seconds, on something that you think will be different on 3 to 5 years' time from where we are today with the evolution.
Yeah, I could jump in. So I think that, first of all, people will start to realize that their data is worth something. They'll want organizations to work on their behalf. We haven't actually talked about the new regulations that Europe has created and will likely be implemented sometime this year or be passed. And that's going to just be a huge game changer, because it will turn an industry that's just full of mistrust into one where you have these organizations working on behalf of their members, right, to try and realize value from the information that they create every single second of every day. Then you're going to get innovation coming off of that, because the raw data sets will be there for anyone to build off of. And that's going to be brilliant, not just for people who want to answer questions about the world, but also for people who want to build applications to actually compete with the likes of Google and Apple and the Amazons of this world as well. So that's what I see. And I think in 5 years, we'll look back and go, my God, we lived in a world in which we were kind of all, data serfs for a very long time, and thinking, how on earth did we allow that situation to arise? And thank God it's different from now.
And we used to send little boys up chimneys to clean them as well, and thought that was natural too.
Right, exactly.
Sheridan, your vision for 3 to 5 years time, quickly. Thanks.
So I would like to think that it will be very easy for individuals to control their data, how it's used, and also to be able to monetize that and to be able to be rewarded with cryptocurrencies. Certainly, whether that's Ocean or others, that remains to be seen. It shouldn't certainly be anything that's dominated by any one cryptocurrency. And I'd also think that the biggest opportunity moving forward is the fact that the blockchain space is open source, which means that most of it is open source, which gives individuals from around the world, many more individuals, an opportunity to engage and really to shape the future.
Final words from you, Chloe?
Yeah, so I think to add to that from the, I guess, the kind of human side as well, is the idea of data monetization, I think, will become much more of a normal concept. It will even become a standard. And like Shiv mentioned, what that value looks like maybe can evolve over time as well. And I think that will have a huge role in filling that gap where people are currently, that gap in income disparity is growing. And I think it could really help to make a significant difference to, because all of us are creating data. It doesn't matter who we are, where we are, what our background is. That's something which can have a huge impact, especially in developing countries. So I'm really excited to see more people kind of find liberation through that as well.
For more information about the solutions offered by each of the panelists, please see the information online. And thanks to everybody for taking part in a very enlightening discussion. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.